everyone. Good afternoon and welcome to this week's FOA Live. Excited to be on with everyone and thank you for jumping in with us. Very excited to connect with you and Jennifer Katrulya, co-host of FOA Live and co-president of FOA, of course, joined by Rush Olney this week. Hey, Rush, happy Monday.
Hey, yeah, very, very happy Monday. And good morning, afternoon, and evening to all the guests wherever you're logging in from. So obviously my shirt kind of tells the tale of why it is a better Monday than most. So go Chiefs. For anybody that missed it, the Chiefs won the Super Bowl last night in overtime with it was like a 3-yard pass to Mecole Hardman, who had dropped about 47 passes this season. So it was a nice change to have him catch it.
Yeah, it was very intense, actually. And it was very intense for a number of reasons. First, just because sitting there, I am in Kansas City this week. Made sure I came in to be part of the certain to be festivities, but also because there has been a pretty healthy rivalry with some of our friends who are 49ers fans. And I wasn't sure whether I would display this or not, but I do want to say thank you very much to Vishal Verma for the autographed drink mug I was given during a lot of the banter last week. And so, Vishal, I know I'll be seeing you in a few weeks, but I do want to say thank you and my condolences and better luck next year. So that's pre-show we discussed whether I would do any gloating or not. The rest of you who are 49ers fans, I am sorry for you, and it was a great game for Vishal specifically. If you're watching or you hear this recording, definitely calling you out because it was a super fun week. So
well, and if it's any little bit of comfort, my son who is 12 years old, not a huge football fan, but when I let him know that he would be getting days off of school if the Chiefs won, he became very passionate about the Chiefs winning. So just know that in that loss, you made a 12-year-old boy's week. So
there you go. Well, there's that to be thankful for. So thank you everyone who contributed to that. So jumping into the rest of the show this week, I do want to thank you. We've had a number of new members joining us. And so that's great. And welcome to the extended FOA family. Really fun to see things continue to grow. And speaking of last week, and when I mentioned the banter going on, I had the pleasure and privilege of being a moderator on the Tech and Innovation panel at the Freedom Capital Markets family office event in Salt Lake City. So Marcia Nelson, who's managing director at Freedom Capital, and everyone at the Freedom Capital family, thank you for having me and for the wonderful, it was standing room only at some points in the room. So a wonderful event as always. And I believe you'll be throwing up the dates for your next event in May. I don't want to get ahead of myself or you. So, but I think coming up in May. And so, but thank you again, really, for the hospitality and the opportunity. Definitely a pleasure. In terms of other housekeeping, we have March 11th, as we've shared on the last couple of shows, will be our family office masterclass. And so we are hard at work with content and buttoning up our speakers for you, and really excited to proceed with that. And then also, I mentioned on our last week's show, and Rush and I were discussing with you, our new membership options as well for our On the Rise community, which includes wealth accumulators who are going through exits, or that's also our athletes, entertainers, and others who are having events in their lives where they're accumulating significant amounts of wealth and want to be thinking about best practices, investing, a number of other things just associated with kind of that path to the complexities that become part of your life as your wealth is increasing and your world is changing. And so we're actively speaking about how and when we'll incorporate that into our masterclass offering. And so it may be as quickly as next month, but we'll keep you posted about that. And then upcoming events. For those of you who are part of our Global Impact community, we do have an event coming up in Miami, or actually Fort Lauderdale, apologies, at the end of February. And then a couple of events coming up in New York, Connecticut. We will be in St. Petersburg at the toward the end of March, and looking at some things coming up in Beverly Hills as well. We've been extended some generous invitations. So for those of you who are members, the key is going to be an increasing number of the invitations we are receiving from others are to very limited access events. And so we have a limited number of seats. Those will be put out through the member website to Platinum members first, to other members as availability remains, and unlikely to be available outside of the membership. And that's true for a lot of our upcoming events as well. As they're hitting capacity, we want to make sure that the rooms remain intimate, that everybody has time to get to know each other and develop relationships. So we probably aren't going to go bigger. And we just want to make sure, again, that those of you, so it means if you are a member, please keep your eye on the invitations so that you secure your spots. And so Rush, anything more about, as we've kind of jumped into the year here and the active pace? I know we were both seeing just a lot of activity out in the markets, people kind of trying to find their footing this year. It seems like a confusing time a little bit.
Yeah, it does. Again, I think a portion of that falls onto it being an election year, and plenty of confusion in that arena. But it doesn't seem to have the same. The pace is frantic, but the direction is obtuse. So to just put it in as few words as possible.
So today I'm hoping on in one area of all of that we'll be able to help a bit. Many of you know that the way I actually first met Rush was through his involvement in the EB5 space and in the real estate investment space. So he'll obviously elaborate on that. But through the last few years that we've known each other and had the chance to work together, he's been generous enough to introduce me to a number of individuals, including more recently a family who's gone through the EB5 process, and we've discussed a number of examples. And I professionally have other involvements that include a rapidly increasing focus on the EB5 space, again, kind of rooted with the work with Rush, which we appreciate. And so as part of that, it's been a really moving and educational experience to not only better understand what families go through as far as making a decision to invest in this EB5 application process and make the move, but also really what that means, because in many cases, we may think that this program is designed for families of means, and so it should be kind of piece of cake, almost a pay for play type of setting. But when you actually dig into it a little bit more, first of all, it's obviously very, very personal for the families involved. They're looking for one reason or another, really what becomes a dream for them to be able to make the move. But then so many complexities that at least for me, I know until I started to learn more, never ever would have contemplated. So Rush, if you want to talk a little bit about how we're going to kind of offer and help to solve for that through the expanding FOA community. And then we are going to take time through the rest of the show to really talk about some best practices and things where we're seeing opportunities, but where families also are hitting a lot of snags.
Yeah, absolutely. I just to reiterate some of the points is a lot of times there are some individuals that do make the investment or make that leap. And what EB5 is, it's a program set up by U.S. Customs and Immigrations. They set it up in 1991, and it is making an investment to secure a green card and then citizenship through roughly a 5 to 7 year process. When an individual makes that, it's one thing, but when you have a family that's making it, which is what is much more typical, the struggles and the complexity of uprooting your family and not just moving them to a new house or across town, but really uprooting them and bringing them to a new country with different culture, different tax and business practices. It can be daunting, which is sometimes masked early on by the excitement and the discussions that I've had and that Jennifer and I've had. It's the excitement quickly kind of, it's almost like a roller coaster. The excitement sort of turns into terror, and more than that, terror kind of the unknown, because they're coming to a place, some with advisors, some without, and really don't know the landscape. And so through FOA and through several discussions that Jennifer and I have had, and this being a community-based organization, one of the big sticking points was where do we have people that are also going through this or that have gone through this to even just be a sounding board, to get questions, to ask questions, and to be able to sort of find that niche in that group that knows what you're going through. And so we put together an informational 10-step guide to what we think would be really helpful to individuals or to families that are going through that. And so the first one, obviously, being the understanding the basics of the EB-5 program and maybe even some of the history of it. Up until 2021, 2022, there'd never been a break in the program as a whole. It had always been passed through bills, through legislation to be continued. And then it was attached to a bill which was not passed. And so the program, along with everything else in the bill, was suspended. And that suspension kind of threw the industry as a whole and current investors and people considering investing into a tailspin for 6 or 8 months with the unknown and uncertainty of the program. And again, I say that not to be an alarmist, but having had never happened in 30 years. And so to have that happen, it was a little alarming. And now, granted, everybody took it in stride. The industry did, the investors, and they have put out much more concrete guidelines for the program. But really just understanding the EB-5 program, prior to, just like you would, any other investment, is crucial.
Well, and so, Rush, I know one of the conversations we've had, and we're going to jump into a discussion about a number of these tips, so that if you've not heard of EB-5 before but are interested, for some of you may have businesses who could be leveraging EB-5, and we won't be deep diving into the specifics of that in this conversation, but it is something where, again, from the individuals or companies that may not be aware of this as a path for businesses to consider, but also how we're trying to help bring the community of families together. One of the things that Rush has encountered, has been shared with me, is so many who have difficulty meeting other families who are going through the process. So one of the things we're offering through Family Office Association, and certainly encourage you to reach out if you have questions about this, but is a special membership for individuals and families who have applied for EB-5 and who are going through the application process. A membership option that begins at the point that you've filed your application or are filing it, up through having been in the U.S. for a year, and so making the transition. A special program, again, specifically for those families who fall into those categories. And then, of course, certainly want and welcome you to be part of the FOA community far beyond that period. But we've created a peer community specifically for EB-5, so that families are able to come together, learn from each other, build that specific connection, and have that support system, which also, of course, leads me to the every time we have a show reminding you all that we don't give advice, professional advice, seek your own professional advice. We don't deal make all that stuff. But in terms of that extended family support system and general advisory, we want to be able to share all of that out and really provide value. So I think in terms of Rush talking about some of what has prompted that and has made this stand out versus, obviously many other pressing things that bring people together or you'd hope would, EB5 has cropped up as something where we've just seen some people in a lot of pain that could potentially be avoided and helped if they had the right advice and information early on. So with that, we're going to spend the rest of the show really talking about some top pieces of advice we've pulled. And I will just remind everyone again that if you have additional questions or want to connect with us, please reach out and we'll make sure we get you more information. So Rush, one of the things that we talked about first is just that it's a major, major decision. And many people think about it as being a financial decision, but you're uprooting. Many of these families have had longstanding businesses, obviously very significant within their communities. Money has been made in their homes. But the decision, I'd love for you to talk about, at least your awareness, the top maybe 3 or 4 reasons people decide to make the move in the first place. But then, we'll really get into it's such an emotional decision for people because you're doing this based on a wish and a dream that's sold to you. And then there's the reality of the steps that people really should be looking at taking. So when you're hearing, like, again, the top reasons that someone even decides to jump into this, what tops the list?
Typically the two topics that are at the top of the list. One is educational opportunities for their family. There are a large number of investors and family investors that are the parents or the matriarch and patriarch have little interest in immigrating, but what they do want is to be able to provide that freedom of movement and education for their children. And so the program includes all children under the age of 18. And so a lot of times families or larger families will make the investment to give the opportunity to their children to go to university in the U.S., which is a huge benefit because once people set down in the U.S., they can choose whatever city, state, town they want to reside in. And so giving them access to an in-state tuition versus an out-of-state or even international tuition is a large financial benefit. The other group are people that are wanting to immigrate holistically as a family. And I think some of the sticking points that end up coming up are the as soon as you're kind of in the system and make that move or issued your green card and make that move to establish residence and permanent residence in the U.S., the tax man cometh, so to speak, and all of a sudden people are subject to their home country tax, now U.S. Tax law, and even potentially international, and that's both personal and business. And so I think that's where a lot of the angst and pain points have come from in the groups that we've spoken to and worked with. We've worked with over 100 families, and it is sort of that, not knowing what you don't know. And so it's the transition, I think, can be easier. I don't think it's ever easy because the complexity of tax structures in the U.S., but abroad are, very, very difficult to kind of suss out, especially as an individual, not a tax professional. And so the earlier those items can be addressed and start to be worked through, seem to bear more fruit and just make the transition easier. And those are the larger ones, but the two groups are sort of education for the family, or a pick up and move mentality.
Oh, well, thanks, Rush. And I do want to mention, so Tom Brady, when I saw your comment come up, I was first thinking, well, we didn't talk about you when we were referencing this week's game. So
I did love your commercials, though.
But thank you very much for being on with us today. And I'm sure you've never heard that before. That was so original. Mm-hmm. So, but if you would shoot a DM to me, I'll be happy to give you more information about Fort Lauderdale, and hopefully we'll be seeing some of you there. But I appreciate the question and happy to follow up with you. If you shoot me a note, I'll make sure I follow up today. And then in terms of, what you'd hope would happen to really make this as smooth as possible transition for people versus what we're seeing, among the top things I would strongly suggest is the realization first that the tax professionals and the legal professionals and those who you may have used your entire adult lives up until deciding to make this decision, if they are general practice, or unless they have a niche practice specifically in EB5, you will save yourself a tremendous amount of angst and difficulty and expense later, in most cases, by seeing professionals who do specialize in this area sooner than later. And I would suggest, Rush can certainly speak to, that you make sure this happens in your home country as well as in the US, and ideally that those are working very collaboratively together, because in a number of cases where we speak with individuals, it may take a few years if you have trusts in place, if you have other financial things in place that seemed like a great idea when you were forming them with no plans to move, or when it was maybe not confirmed you were going to make the move, that then need to be unraveled and restructured in order to help minimize the tax impact and even preserve what you've originally sought to create as you move through the EB5 process. And another piece of it is really, really learning about the movement of money and the tax impact of that as you want to come into the US, and but realizing the amount of cash you will need to have to get yourself started. Understanding, we just had, Rush, obviously a conversation with someone who, pointed out, and you've seen this a number of times. It was the first time I'd walked through it, really probably somebody in this kind of detail, but the need to establish credit. So when you're looking at purchasing a car, purchasing a house, regardless of your financial means elsewhere, you're at ground zero when you make the move. And so legal expenses, getting credit cards, so even having the opportunity to make a purchase or make that spend when you also are limited in terms of the amount and frequency you can bring money over, can be really, really a challenge for people. So getting that advice early on, while you have the time to make the changes and implement the things necessary to actually click those things off as you're moving, is super, super critical. And so, Rush, I know you and I have had some recent experience with kind of another step of this, which is communication and structure of the actual transition. So maybe you can go into that a little bit. Again, not giving advice, have to make sure you get your own from your own professionals, but we can tell you some of what we've been seeing in a very general way.
Well, I think of it sort of as building a team, building a small family office, if you will, that's going to be in place to assist and ensure that the transition goes smoothly, because it is a longer process. So there is time to plan and to work in conjunction. And And to Jennifer's point about bringing on professionals, with both EB5 international or US based experience and expertise is not for that to be a hard fork, because they will still need to understand the local lay of the land. And so it's really an adding on to or a bulking up of your team for a 5 to 7 year period, which then will more than likely dissipate and sort of asymptote out back to a single point of contact. But what really makes sense and seems to work is to find those individuals and start folding them in with your current professionals, so that they can have an understanding, and so that the communication between a tax or finance or trust or estate planning professional is the current team that you have are working and kind of sussing out the details that are being delivered to you in the form and fashion that you're accustomed to. The other thing is that's on the personal finance and immigration side. There's also then working with an immigration attorney, which is vital because they're sort of your lifeline to USCIS, which is the government organization that is proctoring the program, as well as to, or they should be, to the project and to the EB5 group that is providing that service. And so when you start looking at all the dotted lines that make up one single application and one single immigration or use of the EB5 process, you start to see how it sort of expands into a lot of fractured and separated businesses. And so communication and knowing who to reach out to, how to get answers, and how those answers are delivered can be overwhelming. And so again, just thinking through that and finding those individuals that can be folded into your team, your immigration team, and your EB5 team are vital to having a successful and smooth process over that 5 to 7 year period.
Rush, thank you very much. And the half an hour, we always talk about whether or not we'll have enough content, and then it flies by so quickly. And Nadeep, and I hope I've pronounced that correctly, thank you very much for your message. If you don't mind sending either me or Rush a one-off message, DM, if you send it to me, I'll respond to you today. I know I always throw Rush out there, but he prefers that I jump in and handle the actual reply to the messages. So feel free to send me a note, and I'll be able to get back to you today. But what we'd love to do is, since we are up at time, we want to talk about how you identify the right project for you, some of the tips and tricks to making sure that project stands the best chance for success, and even understanding why that's important for you, and the path that you should follow as you make the transition and become part of these projects. So Rush, with your okay, I think what we'll do is we'll follow this with a short blog for everyone, at least initially listing our 10 points, so that everybody has those. And then for those of you who are following our weekly blogs, we'll insert one that deals with some of the project issues and some of the other things that we're talking about today. And also we will make one more post about the offering for the new peer community and the membership. So Rush, anything else you want to throw in today? Otherwise, we will say thank you to everyone for joining us.
Well, I just wanted to throw out to your point is if you are considering, or people are considering, to not take anything at face value, and to go out and look for those communities and those contacts and relationships who are going through the process or who have gone through the process, and start putting your own checklist together, so that when you are looking to when you do pull the trigger and are looking to make that jump and that leap in investment, that when you're putting your team together and choosing an attorney and tax and financial legal professionals, that you can have your own checklist of requirements, wants, desires, and things that you want to have addressed, because each investor and their situation, everybody's a snowflake. And so while they may be great and have a great track record, you may have a case that's somewhat unique and questions that you need answered specifically for yourself and your family. And being able to put those out in front of them, day one, so that they can start working through those, again, is really, really important, and will alleviate a lot of the frustration, both on your side and on the professional side. The fewer 11th hour, pop-ups that both sides have to deal with and try to manage, the better it's going to be for both people in the relationship. So.
All right. So again, a lot to this. It's something we're going to spend much more time on, and certainly very excited to be of support to families who are going through this process, and bring you together and continue to expand that support part of the community, as well as the education and best practice support. So thank you again for everyone who joined us today. Really appreciate the time, and look forward to connecting with you next week.
All right. Have a great week, everybody.
Take care, everyone. Bye.